Great. So maybe we can go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone so much for joining today. It's great to see all of your faces for those of you graciously and bravely turning on your cameras. We're so glad to see this turnout. We're really excited about the EBB program, and we think it can be a tremendous help to closing the digital divide that our communities face. So we're really excited to share with you today and continue to be a resource for you all to make sure that our community members can get signed up for this. So if you're just joining us, welcome. And if you could please add your name and your organization to the chat, just so that we all have a better idea of who's joining us today and what communities are represented, that would be really great. So we will start with, we have a special, sorry, there is one slide missing, but that's okay. We have a special message from the FCC acting chairwoman. So she's going to give us a brief introduction on EBB. And I also wanted to give a chance for two folks from her staff who are joining us today. If you all want to introduce yourselves really quickly.
Sure, happy to do so. My name's in the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau at the FCC. And the teams that I oversee are our Outreach Division, our Consumer Education Division, and our Consumer Complaints Division. So happy to be here today and look forward to sharing more about this great new program with you all.
And aloha winala, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Lyle Ishida. I work for ED and I'm chief of the FCC's Consumer Affairs and Outreach Division.
Great, thank you both. So they are here to answer any and all, hopefully, questions that you may have throughout the presentation. So please feel free to either drop your questions in the chat, which we'll keep an eye on, or raise your hand at any point during this presentation if you have any questions. But for now, I'll start us off with a video with a few opening remarks from the chairwoman.
Hi, I'm Jessica Rosenworcel, the acting chairwoman of the Federal Communications Commission. Right now, internet access is essential for full participation in modern American life. As work, school, and more have migrated online, it's become clearer than ever before that broadband access is no longer just nice to have. It's need to have for everyone, everywhere. And to help all Americans get connected and stay connected during the pandemic and the days beyond, the Federal Communications Commission has launched the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. Eligible households can receive discounts of up to $50 a month for broadband service and up to $75 a month on tribal lands. Participants can also receive a one-time discount of up to $100 off of a computer or laptop. If you qualify for Medicaid, SNAP, free and reduced school lunches, Lifeline, Pell Grants, or other aid programs, you are eligible to participate. Plus, households that lost significant income during 2020 may also qualify. Too many Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are either offline or struggling to afford internet service. But now, thanks to this new Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, help is on the way. But people won't receive this help if they don't sign up. And that's where you come in. We need trusted voices in the AAPI community like yours to let people know that support is available and how they can get it. That's why we created an outreach toolkit on our website, which you can find at fcc.gov/broadband benefit. There's lots of information about the program and searchable tools to find participating internet service providers in your area. No one should have to choose between paying the internet bill or buying groceries or medicine. If you can help us spread the word about the Emergency Broadband Benefit and get people signed up, you can help make paying their bills a little bit easier during these historically hard times. Thank you for what you're doing to help make this program a success.
Oops. Great. So the acting chairwoman has already provided a few details about what the EBB is, but we just want to reiterate and share with you all. So what exactly is the emergency broadband benefit? So it was part of the COVID relief package that was passed by Congress, basically allocates 3.2 billion federal dollars for a program that makes internet access more affordable for low-income households during the COVID-19 pandemic. So in practice, what this means is that eligible households can receive $50 per month of a discount off of their broadband service bill each month, or if someone is qualifying based off of their residence on tribal lands or tribal status, they can receive up to $75 a month. The benefit also covers a one-time $100 deduction to a device that qualifies under the program. So this could be something that is used to access the broadband service that you are now subscribing to, including a laptop, a desktop computer, or a tablet. And these are also purchased through participating providers. So for example, if you are getting your broadband service through Verizon, you would also be purchasing this device from them. And one of the rules for the device purchase is that the subscriber has to contribute at least $10, but no more than $50 of their own funds for the device. And again, this is a one-time discount that's applied. For the benefit, it's limited to one device per household and one monthly service discount per household. But we'll go over a little bit of the details of what exactly a household is in a minute. And as far as how long the benefit lasts, it's going to be until either, sorry, Joy, I'm going to mute you. It's going to be at least until funding, the 3.2 billion, is all used up, or 6 months after the public health emergency is declared to be over, because it is an emergency broadband subsidy. So it's only going to last as long as the pandemic lasts. So how does one actually access these funds? So an individual from a household has to sign up through the EBB process. So first they have to sign up on the EBB website and have their eligibility confirmed. And then they have to go to the service provider to sign up for one of the EBB offerings. So it can't just be applied to any internet service that's provided by any internet service provider. There is a list that will show you later of participating participants, and each of those has a list of eligible plans that you can apply this discount to. The discount isn't given directly to the consumer. So when you sign up for EBB and you receive a discount on your bill monthly through the EBB program, that money is going to go directly to the internet service provider. So you should automatically receive that discount each month on your bill. What kind of broadband services are available? So we know that for some members of our community, the apartments or housing that they may live in might not have the physical infrastructure for a hardwire. So this plan does cover wireless connections, including mobile internet. It just depends on which service providers you are going to select and which plans you're selecting, but it does also cover the more traditional landline connections. And then, like we said earlier, it's going to also cover some of the device expenses. And this is a link to the list of providers. It's actually on the FCC website, and it's divided by different states so that whoever is signing up can look at their local area to determine which participants are offering plans, and they can kind of go through and pick which plan is best for them. And we'll be sharing this slideshow at the end, so you'll have access to all of this and the links. So who's eligible for EBB? So like we said earlier, and like the chairwoman said, it's designed to be a program for low-income Americans. So each eligible household can apply for one monthly discount and a one-time device discount. But a household can mean different things for different people. So under this subsidy, a household is defined as a group of people who live together and share money. And so that means that people don't have to necessarily be a family or be related to each other. And it also means that there can be multiple households at one address. So for one example, if there is one apartment with 4 roommates and they all live in the same address, but they do not share their money or their income, then each of them would be counted as a separate household. So each of them could actually apply for and receive the EBB. Another example is a student who lives away from family. So let's say someone is in college and they live in a dorm, so they have a separate address from their family. They would each be able to apply and benefit from the program. So even though they're in the same family, because they're at separate addresses, they could each get the EBB. And then one last example is, let's say there are 30 seniors all living in the same assisted living home with the same address, but if they do not share the income or bank accounts money, they could also each receive the EBB. So even though it's one address, there could be 30 recipients of EBB in that household. So within each household, the eligibility for qualifying as low income under this subsidy, you need to meet one of these requirements. So your income has to be at or below 135% of the federal poverty guidelines. Or you may already be a participant in certain assistance programs, including SNAP, Medicaid, and other programs. Your enrollment isn't automatic though, so you still have to register even if you're already registered for a different assistance program. You could also qualify through your qualification for a free or reduced school lunch or breakfast program. Or if you're in college or pursuing higher education, your recipient status for a federal Pell Grant could qualify you for this program. And then this is a special category considering, the effects of COVID. So for households that have experienced a substantial loss in income since February of 2020, due to the pandemic or whatever else, they may qualify for the program. And then the last category is that for those who are already qualified for low income internet plans that are already offered by companies. So for example, AT&T has a program and Comcast has their Internet Essentials program where based on the zip code that you live in and certain metrics that they have on the income levels of that neighborhood, you may already qualify for a lower internet price. So if you already qualify for that, then you can automatically also qualify for EBB. We go into the details of eligibility. It gets a little bit trickier, but this is the longer list of all the different ways someone might be able to qualify for the EBB program. And for each of these categories, there are more details about what kind of paperwork you might need, what kind of verification you may need to provide, and what kind of parameters within each category you have to meet to be qualified. But Michael will go into that in a little bit of more detail. But before we get there, I'm going to pause to see if there are any questions. I see Carmen's question. Just to clarify, this eligibility works if just one member of the household meets one of those criteria rather than household totals. And I believe, yes, that's true. And I'm getting a yes from the FCC folks, so I'm very proud of myself.
Hey, Emily, this is Ed. I just wanted to supplement one thing on the ways that households can enroll, and we might get a chance to talk a little bit more about this later, but I did want to clarify that there are some providers who do have approval for an alternative verification process. Typically, these are providers who might have had an existing low income program that predates the emergency broadband benefit. So if you think of some of the more common large companies like Comcast with Internet Essentials, Spectrum with Spectrum Assist, there are others that have been in the marketplace predating this. Some of them may have an alternative verification process that can be done directly with the provider, where they need to go to through the USAC getemergencybroadband.org enrollment process. So in some instances, direct enrollment with a participating provider might be possible.
Great, good to know. And now that you've brought up USAC, I guess one thing to add a little bit more detail on is some of your community members might also already be qualified for and enrolled in the Lifeline program. And just to clarify, they can continue to receive Lifeline benefits even if they choose to enroll in EBB. But that enrollment, again, is not going to be automatic. So they'll still have to go through the website and sign up for EBB. But the good news is they'll already hopefully be familiar with the process because the form is almost the same as signing up for Lifeline. Great, so I don't see any questions at the moment, so we'll move on to verifying eligibility.
All right, thanks, Emily. All right, so how to show that you qualify. So you can show that you qualify by participating in certain government programs or by meeting income criteria. And when applying for EBB online, they're going to attempt to confirm your information automatically, but you might need to provide information or documentation for validation. So to confirm eligibility, additional documentation can be mailed or submitted online. And if you're mailing, make sure to include the cover sheet with the name and application ID. Next slide. All right, so qualifying assistance program participation. So if you participate in one of the qualifying programs, you can provide a letter or documentation as proof. So documentation can include your first and last name or your dependent's first and last name, the name of the qualifying program, such as a SNAP program, the name of the government, tribal entity, program administrator, school district, university, or college that issued that document, and an issue date within the last 12 months or a future expiration date. So some document examples and tips include, you can submit a benefit award letter, an approval letter. You can submit statements of benefits, benefit verification letter, or for federal Pell Grants, these documents should be from the academic year and include screenshots of studentaid.gov dashboard or copy or email sent from the Department of Education about the EBB program. So going back to an issue date within the last 12 months. So for the free and reduced price school lunch program or the school breakfast program, documents can be from either the 2019 to 2020 or the 2020 to 2021 school years. And then for federal Pell Grants, documents should come from the current award year. I know there's a lot of information, but again, like Emily said, we will be sending this PowerPoint presentation afterwards, so you'll have all this information with you. Next slide. All right, so for household income, so if you qualify through your income, you're gonna need to provide documentation to show your annual income. So how are you gonna do this? So the documents that you provide should include your first name and last name, or your dependent's first and last name, as well as your annual income. So document examples and tips. So this can include prior year's state, federal, or tribal tax return, your current income statement from your employer or a paycheck stub, a social security statement of benefits, Veterans Administration statement of benefits, your unemployment or workers' compensation statement of benefits, divorce decree, child support award, or similar official document showing your income, or you can provide a retirement or pension statement of benefits. Next slide. So to verify your identity. So when applying to the EBB program, there's many different types of ID that you can use to verify your identity. So you can choose any one of the following. You can use your social security number, tribal identification number, US driver's license, other government issued ID, such as a state ID, a US military ID, passport, or individual taxpayer identification number. Now, if you submit identity documents, they have to contain your first and last name as well as your date of birth. And then also important to note is that social security numbers are not required to participate in the EBB program. But using a social security number will process your application fastest. Next slide. Okay, so in terms of your address, so your documentation should include your first and last name, and then your physical address. So document examples and tips. So proving your address online is different than if you submit proof by mail. So the online application asks you to drop a PIN in the mapping tool, but if you choose to mail in your documents, you can send a map that clearly shows your physical address or location, including the latitude and longitude coordinates. And then other options include, submitting your driver's license or other valid government, state, or tribal ID, a utility bill, mortgage or lease statements, or your most recent W-2 or tax return. Now, if you live in a duplicate address, so if you live with another adult who participates in the EBB program, you'll need to just answer a few questions to find out if your household qualifies for more than one benefit. So the documentation you'll need to provide includes a complete EBB program household worksheet, sorry, I should say worksheet. If someone else at your address is in the EBB program, and this worksheet will be released later this month. So if you're using the online application to submit this, there will be, you have to complete the blank fillable worksheet, which will appear in the online application. And then if you mail, you're going to need to complete the paper form and basically mail it in. And lastly, so for substantial loss of income. So showing loss of income due to job loss or furlough is only half of the requirement. You'll also need to show that your annual household income now is below $99,000 for single filers or $198,000 for joint filers. So the documentation you'll need to provide includes, again, obviously your first and last name, and then your change in income or job status, or your current household income. And then you will need to provide, you might need to provide two documents, right? One that shows that your income has changed, and then one that shows your current income. And then for loss of income documents, what you can provide is documentation showing layoff or furlough notice, unemployment application or approval letters or statements. And then for current income documents, you can submit your 2020 state, federal, or tribal tax return, Social Security statements of benefits, Veteran Administration statement of benefits, retirement or pension statement of benefits, unemployment or workers' compensation statement of benefits, or a divorce decree, child support award, or similar official document showing your income. So that's information about verifying your identity and eligibility. And now I'm going to kick it off to Annie, who's going to talk to you about how to actually apply for the EBB program.
Actually, maybe this is a good time to pause for questions because I know that was a lot of information. So I see three questions in the chat. The first one I'm seeing is, are undocumented people eligible to apply? So the answer is it depends. So there are multiple ways of applying for the program. So if an individual has an ITIN number or a social security number or a passport, then they can be eligible. So even if their status is different from like an official citizenship or anything else, they are able to apply and can be eligible if they fall in the other eligibility requirements. So the short answer is yes, it's possible, but not always. I see another question that's, if a member of the household qualifies for the EBB program, but they are not the primary account holder for the internet service provider, will that cause any issues? I'm going to push that one off to the FCC folks.
I think that's another scenario where it likely depends. So some providers do have setups where there are other authorized parties on the account, even if they're not directly the householder or the account holder. So you think of a scenario where a spouse might be able to call in and add services or additional phone lines to the account. So it likely will depend on the provider. You would always have the option of changing to a new plan or a new service account in the name of the eligible party. Now, obviously, if your household qualifies based on a dependent child being the eligible party, like a school lunch program, then of course the provider will need to work with an adult to have the account set up and managed.
Great, thank you. And then I'm seeing one more question from Michelle. Will people who are in the Cox Internet program, the Connect to Compete, be eligible for EBB? So I'm not familiar with that specific program. I don't know if you are, Ed, but if it is a existing low income offering by an internet company, yes, you should be eligible.
That's correct. And Cox is a participating provider on the list of providers for the program. And this is an existing low income program. So your best bet would be to talk to Cox directly first about what steps they might need you to take, if any, to begin receiving the EBB discount on those eligible plans.
Great, thank you. So now Annie is going to walk us through what does it actually look like to apply, because it's a little bit more complicated than we would like.
Thanks, Emily and Michael. Yeah, so I'm going to review the application process itself and just walk y'all through how to, or what to expect when signing yourself or someone else up for the EBB. And so you can sign up for the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program either online or by mail. And the online application is available at getemergencybroadband.org. And also, if you Google Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, then the first result will direct you to the FCC's website on the EBB, sorry, where you can scroll down to, if you go forward one on the slide, if you scroll down to the next section, it will also redirect you to getemergencybroadband.org. Next slide. So the online application, So once you're on this, on getemergencybroadband.org, you'll scroll down to this section and click on that Apply Now button to get started on the application process. Go to the next slide. So first, you'll be asked to provide your full legal name, not a nickname, and your date of birth. And then you have one of a few identity verification process options, as we talked about: social security number, tribal ID number, or a government ID, such as a driver's license, military ID, passport, taxpayer identification, and so on. You only need to choose one option. And we want to emphasize that social security numbers are not required to qualify for the EBB, though it is required if you're signing up for the Lifeline program. Lifeline consumers are automatically eligible for the EBB, but these are two separate programs, and a social security number is once again not required for the EBB. And if you do provide a social security number, it's only going to be used for identity verification processes and will not be shared for any other reasons. Okay, move on to the next slide. So next, you'll be asked to provide a home address. You can't use a PO box number here, but you can use a descriptive address if you or the person you're assisting in applying does not have a fixed address. There's also an option to provide a mailing address later in the application that I'll point out when we get to it. You can also use the address of a shelter or facility where you receive mail, and it's recommended that if you do this, then you fill out the household worksheet that we mentioned to verify if your household is eligible for the EBB, as others may be using the same address in their applications as well. The online application will also help you basically determine whether your household is eligible for the EBB, and will essentially walk you through this worksheet. So next, you'll be asked if you qualify for Lifeline or EBB through a child or dependent. For example, if your child is enrolled in a free and reduced lunch program at their school. And a quick side note, why does the application for EBB ask you about Lifeline? The quick answer is the verification flow is the same for both programs, and both are handled by the Universal Service Administrative Company, or USAC. As mentioned before, Lifeline consumers are automatically eligible for the EBB, but this is not a combined application. If you're not enrolled in Lifeline and want to be, you need to fill out a similar but separate application. Next, you'll be asked to create an account with the Lifeline National Verifier, so choose a username and password. And then you'll be asked to provide an email address. Optionally, you can also provide an alternate email. If you're assisting someone else in their application, this is where you would put your email. And a phone number is not required in this section, but you can provide it if you want to. And here's also where you can provide a mailing address if it's different from your home address. Yep. Finally, be sure to check off I am not a robot for the reCAPTCHA. When I was going through this application process to get these screenshots, I accidentally submitted my info without checking this box, and it didn't tell me that there's an error message. So if you hit submit and nothing happens, it's likely because you forgot to check off the CAPTCHA. So don't forget to do that. Okay, and then now you'll be, after you make your account, you'll be prompted to sign in so you can continue with your application. Here you can see that you're able to apply for both Lifeline and EBB and check on the progress and status of any applications you may have already submitted. Since we're applying for EBB here, we're not starting a Lifeline application. We're instead going to apply for emergency broadband at the bottom, which is just beneath. Yep. The first thing you'll be asked after clicking the button to apply for EBB is to indicate how you qualify for the program. You can check all that apply to you. At this stage, you will not be asked to submit documents, but you will likely be asked later. Then you'll be asked to review the information you've provided, and you can also edit if needed. If everything looks good, you then check off the box below to allow all that information to be used to check for your qualification for the EBB. Once again, sensitive information like your social security number will only be used to verify your eligibility and will not be shared for any other purpose. The screenshot here includes a social security number, but we want to emphasize again that is not required. So next you'll be asked to confirm your household, which is essentially what the household worksheet does as well. And we talked about how the EBB is limited to one benefit per household, but again, there can be multiple economic households at a single address. And so you should answer no to this question, because if you're already sharing money with someone who is already getting the EBB, you would not qualify. And then after you hit no, you'll be asked to select what best describes the kind of building or housing. Sorry, go back. Yeah, you'll be asked to select what kind of building or housing you live in. And optionally, if you live in a single family home with 3 or more economic households that have all applied for EBB, you can indicate the number of people total at that address and the number of people in your specific household. But this part is also optional. Now, then if the national verifier confirms that you can apply for the EBB, you'll be asked to initial these agreements. You'll note that there are 3 statements here, but only 2 of them, the second and the third, are required. If you initial the first statement, you'll be indicating that you live at an address with more than one household. If this is not true, if everyone living at your address is sharing money and expenses with each other, then there's only one household at your address and you do not need to initial the first statement. If you're helping someone else apply for the EBB, note that the initials must be theirs. Now you may be asked to provide documents to verify your eligibility. And you'll note previously in the application, you were asked to check off all that apply, but in this case, you're only choosing one eligibility option and uploading the relevant documents to prove either your enrollment in whichever government assistance program you select, or information about your income, or so on. Finally, you'll be asked to initial a number of statements. And then next slide. You'll also be asked to sign by typing out your full legal name. And once again, the initials and the signature must be done by the individual who's applying for the benefit, even if they're working with an advocate. And so after you've submitted all this information, you make your own account and you initial all these statements and you provide all the documents, then the national verifier will work to check your documents. And this may take a bit, so you can come back to your account at any time and check up on the status of your application by going to getemergencybroadband.org and signing in again. So once your documents are reviewed and you're notified that you qualify, you'll get this screen. And the next step is to find an internet service provider in your area that is participating in the program. You have about a month to contact an internet company and let them know that you've been approved by USAC and want to sign up for a service with them. And if you don't find an internet company within that time period, you'll have to reapply for the EBB. So don't wait because funds are limited. And so the previous approval screen will direct you to a list of providers in your area, and you can also check out the full list of providers at any time, or if you want to apply for the EBB through an internet service provider first, you can go to the FCC's EBB website, and if you scroll down just past the Apply Now button, you'll see a section that talks about participating broadband providers, and then you can click on that link that's highlighted, and you'll see all the broadband providers currently participating in the EBB. And so this is a really long page that is being continuously updated as more providers sign up. Then finally, you also have the option to apply to EBB by mail. You can get the form through this link, which we'll also send out, or by calling this number 833-511-0311 for a mail-in application. The application is essentially just the same as the online application, so everything that we just went through is still relevant for the paper application. The 8th page is just for a service provider representative to fill out if they were present during the process and helping the consumer apply. And so in any case, you'll just have to worry about the first 7 pages. When filling out this form, you're encouraged to use black ink and capital letters, and you're very strongly encouraged to submit copies of your identity and eligibility documents, along with the completed household worksheet, which we also have linked and we'll share, in order to expedite the approval process as much as possible. And then you can send the completed form and accompany documents to that address on the screen. And finally, just a preview of this household worksheet that we've been mentioning. It walks you through what a household is and if you can apply to the EBB program, since once again, EBB is limited to 1 benefit per household and not 1 per person.
Great. So I know that was a lot of information. And we went through a lot of screens. Again, we are going to share the PowerPoint with everyone who signed up for the webinar. So you'll have all this information and the links available. But I want to open it up to 2 of the FCC staff we have with us today to answer some of the questions that you all submitted in the chat. Or if you haven't submitted in the chat, but you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. So first I'll go to Ping's question. How do people receive the one-time discount of up to $100 for a device?
So it's important to note that the device discount, it needs to be, you need to use it with the same provider that you're receiving monthly service from. So it's not a coupon or a rebate that you can use at a third-party retail store or any other nonprofits that do refurbished tech devices. It needs to be used directly with the provider. There are about 825 participating providers across the country. About 10% are offering discounted devices through the program. So it's not mandatory that providers offer devices, but there are a number that are.
We'll go to the next question, which is from Joseph. We direct our families to Human IT to be a liaison in getting families connected. Will organizations like Human IT be able to help families get signed up for EBB?
So Human IT is actually a participating provider in the program. I've seen their name on the list that we maintain on our website. It's important to know that if you are a navigator, an outreach organization, a community activist, or a participating provider, you need to be with the person who you're helping to apply in person in order to complete both the paper application and the online application. The only exception to that would be those providers that have an approved alternative verification process. They may be able to take your information over the phone and get you enrolled. But in any other scenario, you need to physically be in the same location as the person you're helping to enroll.
Great, thank you, Ed. If there aren't any additional questions from the group, we do have a list of questions Michael, Annie, and I have prepared to ask. So we'll move through those, but while we go through them, please feel free to continue to add your questions to the chat or raise your hand. So one question that has come up very frequently from some of our community partners is, what happens when the funding for EBB runs out or the 6 months after the pandemic passes? What happens to people who are on EBB but cannot continue to be on it because the funding is over?
Sure. So I think it's important to note, and as you guys did during the presentation, this is a temporary emergency program specifically in response to the pandemic. So there's a $3.2 billion fund, and when that runs out or 6 months after the Department of Health and Human Services has declared an end to the pandemic, the program will end. In the scenario where we have 6 months, the pandemic's been declared over and now we have 6 months to wind this down. It's going to be a lot easier for consumers to get a lot of notice, right? Because they'll hear that announcement, they'll know that in 6 months the program's ending. Judging when the funds might run out is a little more difficult. So USAC is committed to posting information about the amount of funding that remains on a periodic basis after, a week or two of enrollments have occurred and they have some data to work with to make public. In either scenario, the rules have important consumer protections that the FCC included for households. Providers have to provide advance notice of when the last bill that will have a full month's discount. So if you're getting $50, the full $50 discount. They also need to provide advance notice of any month that will get a partial discount. So there is a scenario where, based on fund availability, they might say everybody gets half of the discount this month, not the full amount. The provider will have to tell their customers that as well. They also, at those times, need to explain what the full non-discounted rate of their current internet package is once the program ends. And most importantly, to avoid people from being stuck with an episode of bill shock or a bill they can't afford to pay, households will have to affirmatively opt in to continuing service. So if the funds run out when the program ends, internet service will end instead of a service continuing and accruing unexpected or unaccounted for bills for a household. So I would encourage anyone, once they start to hear that the funds are running out from their provider or from others, proactively reach out to your provider, start a conversation, ask if there are other plans they have available that might meet your budget and meet your needs. Some do have other low-cost internet programs that you might be able to take advantage of.
Thank you, Ed. I know a lot of folks were concerned about bill shock, so it's great to hear that folks will have the option to continue, but don't have to once the funding runs out. Another question we've received from a few folks is, what about bundled packages? So a lot of the internet service providers might have cheaper options or sometimes even require consumers to sign up for like a phone service, a cable service when they sign up for broadband. So does the EBB still apply for those types of bundled packages?
So according to the program rules, you can use the emergency broadband benefit towards a bundle. The rules specifically say it can't be used for the TV portion of your bundle of service. So for example, if you had a package that included cable TV, phone, and internet, the amount that the provider allocates to TV would not be, the discount monthly could not be used for that part. So it can only be used towards phone and internet as part of a bundle, but it can be used towards bundled packages.
Great. So I'm seeing one question from Michelle in the chat. She's asking, how do we become a provider? And Michelle, are you, just to clarify on your question, are you asking how to become an internet service provider or an advocate who is signing people up for EBB? An advocate. Okay, so how can folks on this call sign up to become an intermediary for folks to sign up for EBB?
Right, so I don't think there's a formal or official process for becoming an intermediary. The FCC and USAC are not sort of designating others as intermediaries to facilitate sign up. I would encourage you to visit our website, fcc.gov/broadband-benefit. You can sign up there to be on a listserv where we're sending out the latest information about the program. And we'll be doing that with updates about funding levels that remain and other new information that we learn about the program. I think the other thing that you can do too is, familiarize yourself, get a copy of the paper application, look through the screenshots in this presentation, go to the website, learn what's there. And just be ready and prepared to work with people. Again, if you're helping them actually complete the application, you will need to be there in person to help them do that. But yeah, I think those are the best ways that you can help others get signed up.
Great. And I do want to note, Michelle and others who are interested in becoming advocates who are acting as intermediaries, OCA, Advancing Justice, AAJC, and NCAPA are also resources for you. So after following this presentation, if you still have questions as you begin signing folks up in your community, definitely reach out to us and use us as a resource if you have any questions. We're happy to connect you back to folks like Ed to make sure that things are going smoothly on the ground. And we'd love to hear your feedback to make sure that we can incorporate any changes that need to be made as well. I'm seeing a question from Carmen about when the EBB program concludes, will bill amounts go back to what we previously paid prior to EBB, and is it guaranteed? As in, we shouldn't expect higher bills than what we paid prior to EBB enrollment.
So I think it's important to understand and to note that in that conversation with the provider about which plans they offer that are eligible as part of the EBB, you know, that might be an opportunity where somebody might choose to get a higher speed package than they've had access to because they couldn't afford a higher speed package based on their situation. But maybe that's a household need. They have multiple people doing remote school and other things at home. So there will be situations where people consciously choose to upgrade to get you know, more benefit out of the EBB. And in that scenario, if they choose to continue with that package, they might be paying more. But in a scenario where you're being offered and you're maintaining the same package you had before, you're just getting the discount off, then you shouldn't expect to get a higher bill after the program ends. You should definitely come let us know if that is happening. It's consumercomplaints.fcc.gov. And you can file a complaint there, and we're happy to work with you and the provider to find an outcome.
Thank you, Ed. And to clarify additionally to that, my understanding is that if an individual chose to participate in a more expensive plan for faster internet or whatever it may be, but after EBB funding ran out, decided to end that program, they would have to re-enroll in a new plan that's currently offered on the market, correct? They wouldn't be able to just opt back into their old plan if it doesn't exist anymore.
That's true. And that's another situation where you definitely want to have a clear conversation with the provider about what might be available to you. Some people might be able to go back to a former rate plan that they were taking advantage of or making use of. Other people, you know, you may need to choose a different plan at that time. All of that said, it's important to remember that either way, even if you're getting service under the EBB with your current provider and you've had service with that provider for 5, 10, you know, a number of years, when the EBB ends, you have to choose to continue service to keep getting internet. You have to pick either the plan you're on currently or a new plan to move to in order to continue with that provider moving forward.
Great. Seeing one more question, asking for clarification. You mentioned that applicant needs to be physically present in person with the person who is helping. What about agencies that are providing remote services through helpline counselors? Are there any exceptions?
Currently, there are not. So this has to deal with the rules around the National Verifier Program, which is part of the Lifeline and part of the underlying infrastructure of the emergency broadband benefit. And the requirement is that you need to physically be in person with someone that you're helping to apply. You can provide phone instructions to people who are filling out the form. So somebody might have the form up in front of the, you know, on their computer screen, or they might have a paper application in front of them, and you can walk a person through filling it out, but they physically need to sign the documentation or initial in a number of places themselves.
Great. So it sounds like you can assist them, but you can't actually fill out the form for them.
Correct.
Great. So I'm not seeing any more questions, but definitely send them through if you have them in the next 8 minutes. But before we end today's session, we want to make sure we share with you additional resources that we are preparing at OCA, AAJC, and NCAPA. So we did record this training session, and we'll be sending this along with a PowerPoint out to you all. We are working on translating some materials such as a FAQ sheet, but we are currently in need of additional help translating, especially for some of the languages that are less represented, such as Burmese, Thai, etc. So if you all or someone in your organization has the capacity to help us, please let us know. It is possible we might be able to provide some compensation, but we're not sure about that. We're working on that. There are translated materials on the FCC website that are available. However, there were a few issues. So if you are reviewing those translations and you see any issues, like words that aren't commonly used, even if technically they might be correct, please flag those for us, because we're working with Ed and others at the FCC to make sure that translations are the best versions that they can be. We're also in the process of creating social media toolkits. So these will be, easy to alter images where you can insert your own organization's logo and share it with folks on your listservs or your social media. That will include things like FAQs and the link to sign up for EBB. And then lastly, next week, in partial celebration of API Heritage Month, OCA, NCAPA, and AAJC are hosting a Digital Divide Awareness Week, which will include things like blog posts from community organizations about how our communities are affected by the digital divide and what type of programming you all are doing on the ground and why it's important that we secure reliable, affordable broadband for our communities. So if you'd like to participate, please let us know. We'd love to feature some of your incredible work. If not, please follow along. We'll be on social media and our blogs will be up. So that's all that we have for now. If you all have any questions, feel free to stay on. We do have 5 more minutes. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining today. Definitely continue to use us as a resource. We want to make sure as many of our community members are able to sign up as possible. So feel free to email us or reach out in any other way. And we are here to answer your questions and make this process as smooth as possible, as is the FCC. And I want to thank you both for joining today.
Thanks for having us, and appreciate the support that OCA, AAJC, and NCAPA have given us and pointing out some issues with the translations. We do have updated versions of a number of those that should be posted by the end of today. And we are adding additional materials in Simplified Chinese to complement we already have traditional Chinese materials available, but we'll be adding Simplified Chinese versions as well. And those should be up by the end of the day today.
Great. Okay, if there are no other questions, that's all that we have for you. But again, if you have questions, feel free to stay on and ask them while we have Lyle and Ed online with us. Okay, it looks like there are no other questions, so I will save us from the awkwardness of staring at our videos and each other's names. Thank you all so much. And I guess one plug I forgot is that we are having a ethnic media webinar on Friday. So that's going to be for folks like, Chinese television channels, radio stations, newspapers, etc., specifically for the Asian American community to get the word out to them so they can also help us to conduct some outreach for our community. So if you have folks in that world who might be interested in learning more and helping us spread the word, please let them know that we have a webinar on Friday, and we'll send out a flyer for that in a follow-up email as well, so you can share that. Okay, thank you everyone. Definitely email us if you have any questions. Take care.
Thank you.